have today. So we have today the guests, Przemek, Simon, and Martin. The idea of those webinar comes from the knowledge and bigger knowledge that we gain from our TMMi organization, that starting the TMMi, it might look hard until you get enough knowledge. And the Simon and the Martin give us enough information just to kick off and give us a tool. And of course, we love tools. We like to, we prefer to play with the tools. And this kind of tool was the survey. If you're following our social media, probably you noticed that on the December, there was post referring to this survey. And our message was that check your organization, check yourself. There's new challenges for new upcoming years. So hopefully some of you did use this functionality. And this will be also the subject of today's talk. So we found, I would say victim, but for me it's a kind of hero. We find Przemek. Przemek is one of the person who was really keen of his organization. He was thinking about the quality of your organization. He has a big knowledge, and he has the challenge that his goal about to check how far his organization is according to the standards of the quality, and what area he should invest more to have the higher level of the quality, get the better quality on his product and all those stuff. So this was the beginning of the concept of our today's meeting. And I guess, Natalia, if I forget something, please ping me. If not, then I guess this is the best time to pass the voice to the Simons, since the Simon prepares some kind of slides. So Simon, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much. And hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. And hello to anybody who watches this in recording later. I'll just introduce myself firstly. So my name's Simon Frankish. I'm a TMMi Foundation accredited TMMi Lead Assessor. And I lead the process improvement and TMMi practice within Experimentus. And as Experimentus, we've been involved in TMMi for 14 or 15 years, basically since it kicked off. And we've done many assessments, many training courses, and helped many organizations improve their test process using TMMi and some other methods as well. I'll just share my screen with some very brief slides. That's the one, I believe. Can you see that? Okay, which one can you see?
Of course,
the presenter's view.
of course, isn't it always the same? Ah, dear me.
Always, exactly.
Right, let me try one more time. Hang on. Try doing this. Apologies, I don't use Zoom that often, so let's try it this way. So hopefully, is that better?
Yeah, much better.
Excellent. So today we're just going to be looking at, with Premek's help, the TMMi e-survey. So the e-survey is a tool that we put together, as Seba said, to help people take a high-level look at their test processes through the lens of TMMi. And understand where you potentially stand in terms of the maturity of your test processes. Just a little introduction on TMMi for people that maybe didn't attend the last webinar or are interested. I know for people that attended the last one, Eric van Veenendaal went through this in a great deal of detail, so I'll keep this fairly short, but there are a few things it's important to understand in order to work out where we're going with the survey. So there are 5 maturity levels within TMMi on the left-hand side of the screen there. Level 1, everybody gets automatically, and that's your initial level. But then levels 2 to 5 contain what we call process areas. And each process area looks at the practices for a particular discipline within testing. As you'll see, level 2 is relatively straightforward. It's actually planning, writing, and executing your tests and having an appropriate test environment in which to do that. And then as we move up the maturity levels, the process areas get a little bit more difficult sometimes to understand, and a little bit less bread and butter that we described before. Within each process area, there are things called specific goals, and within each specific goal, there are specific practices. The only reason you need to know that really at the moment is because our survey basically asks a question per specific goal. So if you see the bubble diagram in the middle of the page, there are 50 specific goals. And so when we ask questions throughout we're basically looking at those specific goals as we ask questions throughout the survey and providing an indicative score based on that. When we do more intensive work, we will actually just help people through doing face-to-face interviews and looking at documentation. So this survey is designed to give you an idea upfront of where you may be, and hopefully help you make some decisions about where you want to get to ultimately. So we'll look at the survey itself. I don't know, do you want to share the survey, Przemek, or would you like me to?
I can share the survey.
It might be easier if you do it, so I will stop sharing.
If I can share, because I don't know
You
the
should have
Zoom as well.
Yeah.
So it looks, we're challenging you, sorry.
Yeah.
This is first time. I promise I will invite you to the second try, and then you will be expert from the Zooms.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I think I can share it right now. What I'm sharing?
Survey.
Yeah, we can see
Survey.
that. Thank you.
Good. That's good. Okay. So you are good?
Yeah.
With your introduction? Okay. I will make a little introduction on why I'm here, because I'm Przemysław
Exactly. I
Kwiatkowski.
wanted to ask you about this.
Okay. And I'm in testing since 2002, so it's quite a while. I worked in many organizations and for many clients in the banking sector, in the infrastructure for the higher education, civil aerospace, and so on. And I've been working in many different roles as a tester, test leader, business analyst. One time I was a developer, and of course the test manager and the trainer. My current employer is the human data science company focused on using data and science to help healthcare clients to find better solutions for their patients. So my company offers broad range of solutions that helps companies drive healthcare forward. And to set the context, Seba did it previously, why I'm here. My company asked me to run the test process improvement program. And I believe I did it for my in my previous companies, but and I believe that every tester has an experience in the test process improvement. From my perspective, we always want to change the way we work, to introduce new tools, to introduce new best practices, etc. The only difference that we are doing normally and what I did normally in my organization, in my work, was the scale and the levels. And currently, what I'm doing is driving this initiative for the company that has around over 200 testers. Divided into a couple of central competency centers, testing more than 5 products. So the the change that we are trying to do here is quite big from my perspective. Currently, we've created because it's not only me, it's the whole organization of people that are doing that. We've created a framework to evaluate and improve the testing processes. The framework is based not on the TPI, not on the TMMi, but on the TPI Next model, and it's aligned to our needs. I will talk about it later. In our tool, we have around 200 questions, and we are divided into 4 areas: process, metrics, tools and technology, and people. And we are combining that into 23, let's say, not goals, but the parameters. And so far, last year, we've audited over 100 projects. We set the action plans for them. For each pillar, the action plan, and we started re-evaluation to check how our action plans impacted the quality. So that's my experience. I hope that that will help in this webinar.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. It's always good to know the background people are coming from. Perhaps if we can start working through the survey. So what we intend to do is to work through the survey to a certain extent. I don't think we'll go through every single question, but there are. Well, we can if you want to, but it might not be the most interesting thing.
Okay.
There are some which are more interesting questions than others. I think is what we saw. Maybe
Simon, let's go through the. So this is the first page, right?
Correct.
Just fill out some details, dummy details, and we have this progress bar here, which is very nice.
This is the standard format that we use and the standard scoring method we use. So for each question, which, as I said, each question is aligned with a goal within the TMMi model. We've got a strongly disagree, slightly disagree, slightly agree, and strongly agree option, as well as don't know. And as you work through, read the question, internalize what it means to your organization, and answer as appropriate. And we're going to put a few dummy scores in now, I think.
Okay. Maybe I'll go back. Do you want to say something about the questions, or
as I say,
only we'll discuss the ones that I will have problems with that?
Yeah. So each page really is a process area, and each question on each page is a goal within that process area. So this first one is test policy and strategy. So it's looking at the things which at the highest level, TMMi believes are important to a test policy and an organizational test strategy. So it's looking at, is your test policy supporting your overall business goals? Have you got an organizational approach to testing set up and working? And have you set up measures which will allow you to measure whether the performance of your processes is actually meeting those goals that you set in the first step? So that's the 3 goals within test policy and strategy within the TMMi process area. And we ask questions around that because that gives us a high level indication of where people stand within that process area.
Maybe it's good to ask a question, because we have established an organizational approach, framework, or strategy for how testing should be conducted. And in our organization, we have a homebrew framework covering procedures, templates, best practices, guidelines, standards, etc. And every employer working in the delivery has to be trained and certified in this tool, in this framework. And the path of the certification depends on the role of the person is assigned to. Sometimes the product manager, sometimes is the tester, sometimes is the developer. And coming back to the question, I would ask you, how I should answer here, like strongly agree, maybe I just answered, but how do you rate this question from this
Yeah,
perspective, knowing that, having that knowledge?
yeah. I think you've described that you have a in-house developed set of processes and procedures, guidelines and templates, and that's absolutely fine. If they're appropriate for your use, and I'm sure they are because you wouldn't have developed them otherwise, and you're providing appropriate training for people in them, I think strongly agree would be the correct answer in that case.
Okay, and the no opinion, don't know, how does it count against the results?
That would count, I believe, as a slightly disagree typically, because if you don't know whether you've got an organizational approach, the chances are you probably haven't got one. So it counts as a slightly disagree. So it would be a slightly negative score within the tool.
Okay, we can go next then.
So
I think those what do you call descriptions after each part, after each page are quite good. Think about how test planning is approached. This is setting the context.
correct.
Yes. Why we identify critical areas for testing by assessing the capturing risk. Yeah. This is done in my organization. This is done. The risk assessment is done before the implementation. We are partly some of our projects are going into V model, and some of the projects are going into agile methodology. So. So it depends. Sometimes it starts before the project initiation. The risk assessment is done. And sometimes, the risk assessment is built into the sprint planning. The part.
Yeah, and in TMMi perspective, that's absolutely fine. Again, it's about what's appropriate for your organization, and if you're using both waterfall type delivery methods and agile delivery methods, obviously we accept that there's differences there. What we're really looking for here is the intent is that you consider and capture associated risks that inform your testing, basically, and how you do that, and at what point in the delivery methodology you do that. It is kind of up to you and dependent on which delivery methodology you're using. So again, strongly agree, seems right to me.
And regarding the second question, we approach testing items features based on identified risk and quality goals. If you are going into agile and have the set of user stories that needs to be taken, how do you approach, how we should approach? We are approaching like that. We are doing the user stories we are taking from the business analyst or the product owner, which have already assigned the severity. Of course, we as a team, my teams are discussing the severity and the risks prior to the implementation, but all of the requirements from the sprints should be tested and covered. So there is no space for covering only a few risks. How I should respond to that question in such situation?
Yeah, I think that's fine, because what you're effectively doing in when you're deciding on what user stories go into each sprint is you're effectively deciding on that risk profile at that point. So you'll say, we're only going to put these user stories into this sprint for a number of reasons. They're the most important ones. They're the ones they're the functionality we want to get out there first, and that is discussing the risk. So when we look at agile, the nature of the agile planning informs the test planning effectively. It is the test planning. So your risk, you're covering your risk when you decide what goes into which sprint effectively. So it's a slightly different approach to the waterfall, where you might decide, do a more traditional risk-based testing type approach and decide on things that way. But in Agile, it's slightly different. But again, if it's done appropriately, and as long as there is evidence that risk absolutely is considered, it's compliant with the TMMi model.
Okay. This is quite obvious if we are doing the estimation. If we are working in such organization as mine, it's always estimation is always included in the overall testing activities are planned, active managed. Yeah.
In Agile,
Sure.
certainly, obviously.
Okay.
So this is test monitoring and control process area. So this is really looking at once your testing started, your test writing tests, executing tests, etc. How are you? What are you monitoring while you do that, and how are you reporting on that really?
And what metrics you would say would be quite obvious ones here, because currently we are capturing some metrics, some basic metrics, because as I said, we have a lot of projects, and on the project level we are doing quite good, because we have timely reporting, daily reporting. We are capturing those for the projects, but for the global, from the global perspective, we have only basic ones, and we are thinking on extending that framework. So what metrics you would suggest here?
First thing to note is TMMi is not very prescriptive, so it won't tell you exactly what metrics it expects to see. As assessors, what we look for is the fact that you are taking measures and collecting metrics on things that are important to you. However, there are some things we would expect to see. So this is quite deliberately worded. So it says progress and performance of testing is monitored. So we're looking for something more than, we've got 100 tests, we've run 90 of them, therefore we're 90% of the way through the testing. We're also looking for more qualitative measures. So you might want to split out your tests by priority, for example, and you might want, and you would certainly want to split out your tests by which risks they're mitigating and how important those risks are, because that gives you a much more qualitative understanding of where you are with your testing instead of just pure progress. Obviously, we'd look for a lot of metrics, or we'd look for metrics around raised defects, because they're very important indicators of quality. We'd look for metrics around the performance of the process itself as well. So how do you know that your process is good? How do you know your process is working properly?
That's important.
And that's quite important. But what those metrics are exactly differs absolutely from client to client, because every client's different. Every client has things that are important and not so important. So we have a set of metrics that we do take to clients from time to time, but we always tweak them, and we always maybe pick a subset of them, because every client is different. And that's where we need to be, TMMi and the way we look at process improvement has to be flexible, because we have to put it into the context of the client that we're talking to at that time.
So if I have those quantitative and testing is monitored, but the performance of the testing activities is not being monitored right now. So what answers should I give there?
I think maybe slightly agree. Yes.
Slightly agree.
It's between the slightly agree and slightly disagree, but we don't like to give a middle way, because everyone just goes for that all the time.
Yeah.
So I guess slightly agree in this case.
Slightly agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Product quality monitors against our expectations. I would strongly agree here.
Good.
It's quite when the test progress quite significantly. I would strongly agree because we have quality is being monitored, and once it slips, we are investigating the root cause and we take the corrective actions. So it's always like that.
Okay, good. So the fourth process area at level 2 is quite simply it's called test design and execution. So it's looking at how you're writing test scripts and prioritizing test scripts, and then how you're executing your testing, including the raising of incidents. So relatively straightforward.
This is straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah. The important thing here really is how are you, one of the important things is how are you prioritizing your tests as you write them. And again, that goes back to looking at the risk. Last one at level 2, test environments. So if test managers are listening to this, we always have issues with test environments, or often have issues with test environments. So have you got the right test environments? Are you managing them correctly? Are they available when you need them?
Right configuration to be used for the test execution. Yeah, we have, because we are mostly, for most of our projects, we are working on the Salesforce platform, and we have the Salesforce sandboxes here. So those environments are always pre-checked by our teams. So I would strongly agree here. But yeah, there are close to real life as possible. Of course, we're having the data that cannot be revealed even for testers. So it's obfuscated, of course. And this one, activities in the test environments are visible to all stakeholders. By all stakeholders, what do you mean by them?
So that's really
which are stakeholders you are mentioning?
So that's really
here?
talking about the people that are interested in what's going on in the test environments. So it's largely to ensure that there's no conflict of interest with people using shared test environments, for example. So if you're if you're doing something which is changing data or deleting data, and someone else is testing in the same test environment, are they aware of what's happening, etc., etc. You've also got things like project and development would certainly be interested in potentially what's going on in test environments, just so they know what the progress is like, etc. It's just about ensuring visibility to people that need to know what's going on within a test environment.
But you are mentioning here the client, or
if it's appropriate that they see that. So if you're doing something around prototyping and you want to demonstrate something to them, absolutely. Again, as I say, TMMi isn't prescriptive. So when it talks about stakeholders in this context, it's the people that are appropriate to see things going on in the test environment. So if we went in and you said we use our test environments to show prototypes to clients, absolutely, they're included in the stakeholders mentioned there. Yeah.
And when we are sharing, of course, the UAT environment, we have the development environment sandboxes, the QA sandboxes, and the UAT sandboxes, and we are sharing the UAT with our clients, of course. But our testers are using them as well, checking the UAT before the UAT. So how should I answer here?
I think I'd say that would strongly agree. I mean, it sounds to me as if you do have the required visibility for the people that need to see it within each test environment.
Okay, thank you. Oh,
yeah, feedback. So as you go through the survey, at the end of each maturity level, so this is the end of level 2, you just get some initial feedback, which talks about how strong your performance appears to be based on your survey answers as we went through. So you get if you've done well, you get a nice smiley robot. If it's not so good,
yeah,
you get a frowning robot.
I can see smiling robot, so it's quite
Yeah.
good.
So it's good, and there's some words in there as well. So yeah. And we'll come on to that later, because we'll cover what kind of output you get from this at the end as well. I can show you that.
Okay, I'm going forward. Okay, thinking about auto testing.
This one is the process area called test organization. So it's basically talking about is testing recognized as a profession in its own rights, or is the role of testing recognized, because that's more appropriate way of talking about it in an agile world and a DevOps world, and are people effectively helped within their career as a tester or a person who does testing.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, we have a Homebrew framework which precisely describes the roles and responsibilities.
Yeah.
We have, of course, onboarding and training programs which are standardized all over the organization. And we have the training materials, processes, tools, products within the organization, and the testing guild meetings. So I think we are covering this part.
Yeah, and we find that if it's a fairly large organization, with a HR department and a proper structure, this is often pretty much okay. Although this can be one of the interesting ones where when we do a more deep dive interviews, perhaps the testers themselves don't feel quite as positive about this as management sometimes.
Why?
Well, that's I think it's a communication issue sometimes. Certainly something we've seen in the past.
If the QA department is giving you the right outcome and communicates in the right way, I think everything should be fine. But
true.
you have more experience than I. I have only a couple of companies, but from my experience, it was always quite good. Testing activities are clearly defined in our job descriptions. In such scale in such organization as ours, we have such things.
Yeah.
The career paths. Of course, we have the career paths that encourage people.
I would hope so.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Yeah, I was thinking about how we are encouraging people, and we have a lot of trainings, as I said. We have also we are encouraging people to participate in the sessions prepared by the different roles. As well as we are preparing the session for the non-testers, how to cooperate with testers. So I think those we are covering that part.
Yeah, good.
There is an organized test process framework deployed organization, yes. And the approach assessing process efficiency and we have the retrospectives and postmortems, maybe not postmortems, because this is the quite weird wording, but on the project level, we are not quite there to assess all hundreds of projects at once, but in one project we are doing such things, and the lessons learned after each sprint. We are of course doing the retrospectives.
Yeah.
And after the project closure, we are doing the lessons learned.
But I think as you say, on individual projects, this is often fine, particularly in Agile because of the retrospectives. One thing we do sometimes see is that that lessons learned aren't applied across the organisation as a whole when they potentially could be, which is quite important. So if an individual Agile project learns a better way of doing something, or something that they could avoid doing in the future, that there should be some mechanism for making that information available across the whole organisation, so that you get the full power of that. So that's even where people are doing retrospectives and doing them well, that's sometimes a mechanism we can see that doesn't actually work properly, as an example.
Okay, but as I said, we are making efforts to do this globally. So and we are aware of that.
Yeah. Okay.
There are some places that we can exchange the information about the projects. So
yeah. Okay, that's good then.
I would slightly agree here.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
Next one's very straightforward. Training. So all this really asks is, do people who need training have the opportunity to take training? And is that training the right kind of training? Is it effective? Really? And the key thing we look for here is a balance between the strategic needs of the organization. So organizations that might be moving to Agile, away from waterfall, there's a strategic need for some Agile type training there. But then we also look for, how do you balance that with the needs of the project? Because there might be some specific project related training required. And then how do you balance that with the needs of the individual? So the individual might have aspirations to do various things within their career, and they might need some training to support that. So we look for a balanced training program.
And we have those paths that I mentioned before, and I just forgot to mention that before every project we have project initiation phase, in which we are planning the crucial training for additional training for the projects if we have, because we have a lot of projects which can when we can attend trainings on the functionality of them. So before the project starts, we can jump on the training session to know what's the functionality here.
Yeah, that's good.
And I said cross-discipline training for all team members. Yes, we are having those. We are the QA guild is also participating in those activities. So I would say strongly agree.
Okay, good. So this is the test life cycle and integration process area. So this talks about how two things really. How is testing embedded within the development methodology? The software development life cycle in general, and then it also talks about a high-level test plan. So something like a master test plan, which defines all of the test levels that you're going to use for a particular project or program of work.
Yes, I mentioned that we have this framework.
You have this,
yeah. But the testing is embedded through the development life cycle. The test approach can be tailored in the structured way for different teams' needs, and this is really interesting because I would like to know what's the story behind that, because I thought that maybe that was the bad impression, but I thought that we need to the strict rules, adhere to the strict rules, but here there is a window that can change the procedures.
Yeah, so TMMi is very pragmatic, so very sensible, and that there has to be a recognition that there is no one size fits all set of test processes. It's just not possible. So what this looks at is Yes, you will have a standard set of test processes, but there will be an acknowledgement that in certain circumstances, and we would want to see those circumstances largely defined, that process can be done in a slightly different way. And as an example, so typically that's kind of small projects, small changes, bug fix releases, may not go through the full test process that you would follow for a large implementation of a new program. And that's just sensible. But what we look for as TMMi assessors is that is defined and managed, and people have to justify why they're deviating from the standard set of test processes, and there needs to be some kind of sign off on that deviation. So it's trying to be sensible, but at the same time maintain control, so that people can largely test in the same way, but where it's not appropriate for them to test in exactly the same way, they can make a case and tailor that slightly.
I have the same experience with the size of the projects and the duration of the projects. Of course, this is the same, but we are experiencing, we are delivering for many clients, and sometimes our clients they have their own tools for the test management or the requirement management, and they doesn't want to spend an extra time on keeping test deliverables or project deliverables in our tools. So in that case, we are always doing the analysis of the changes, agree on those changes, and save the agreements in the project documentation for later. So when we are preparing our process improvement methodology, we left such backdoor for our clients.
Yeah, and I think that's fine.
It's maybe not common, but sometimes it happens.
I did an assessment for a company in Mexico a couple of years ago, and they had exactly the same situation. They were working for a number of clients. They had their own set of test processes, which were good, but occasionally the client would say, no, I want to do this particular area in a way we've always done it, or I want to use a particular tool that we've always used. And they had a very straightforward process for documenting those changes, so that tailoring for that client, and getting sign off on it, and ensuring that whatever it was they were doing would lead to the same quality outcome as if they followed their own set of processes. So yeah, absolutely, it happens. We see that all the time.
Okay.
Non-functional testing is a kind of a process area in its own right. So it talks about largely the things that you would do within maturity level 2, but as applied to non-functional testing as opposed to functional testing, really. So some of this is almost identical to the things we saw at test planning around identifying risks, but as applied to non-functional testing. And it talks about, are you writing test cases, and are you prioritizing those tests appropriately? So largely this is, if you're doing it that way for functional testing, to people, if they're doing non-functional testing, will typically be doing this as well.
Well, this is where my company or my department is different than the others, because as I mentioned, we are working on the platform, which is delivered by quite big company, and the other difference is that we are working in the delivery part, which means that we are getting from the product. This is the different organization, but the product organization creates for us the product, and we are configuring it depending on the requirement from the clients. But the product itself stays as it is, the baseline application. So I would like to say that the product is testing all the non-functional characteristics for us. And on our side, we are not doing that thing. Of course, we are checking whenever the application is behaving as acceptable. But those tests are not done by the organization I'm currently talking about. So how should I respond to that question in this? So if I know that those test cases, those tests are executed, but we are not doing that on the delivery side. Yeah, how should I respond it?
I think, you know, for the survey, I think I would put no opinion and don't know, possibly, and then just ignore the results for this area, because it's not something your area does. When we do assessments in the real world, you know, the larger assessments, it's possible to exclude a process area from the assessment. So if the scope, if a client is really not doing anything in that area, we can exclude it, and they can get, well, you can be assessed in that approach, and you can get certification in that approach, so long as there's good justification for not including that process area. But for the survey, I think no opinion, don't know, and then just ignore the scores in that area would probably be the most appropriate way to do it.
For the real life example, you would probably assess the whole organization with the.
Yeah, we'd agree the scope of the assessment with you, and if the best way to do an assessment would be to include your area and the other area that does the non-functional testing, then we would do that and then bring that back in. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'll just say no to this whole part.
Sorry, the last one at level 3 is called peer reviews process area, and it's really talking about how do you review both the work products and actually how do you review things like user stories, requirements, etc. So your test basis documents as well.
Yeah, this is we are doing the reviews.
Yeah.
We are peer reviewing. Also, the test leaders are reviewing the test cases. So sometimes the business analysts are doing that. So I think this is. Yeah.
Good.
Oh.
So
sad
again,
robot.
we have a little, what have we got? Sad non-functional testing, but of course we can ignore that because it's really excluded. Yeah, this is the same type of feedback we saw at level 2, where we just take a look at your answers and provide some words and some context around what your answers actually mean. We're into level 4 now. There's only 3 process areas at level 4 and 5 each. So the first one is called test measurement. So it looks about at a higher level, what are you measuring in order to understand how good your testing is and how good the ultimate software quality is. So this is more at an organizational rather than a project level.
So on the larger scale, we have something called after actions reviews with clients. So maybe that could be counted as slightly agree, or
I think we would look for evidence that you were amalgamating the outcome, you know, the things that you measure across all projects and pulling it together in a central repository, maybe, in order to understand how good overall your testing is. So I think it's looking at that kind of thing. So yeah, possibly slightly agree seems right there.
So collecting data is out of the box of many test management tools.
Yeah.
So yes, we are collecting that data. Sometimes we are improving the process from those numbers
Okay.
by analyzing those numbers. So maybe not. We have some basic measurements, but yes, sometimes we are improving. So maybe, I don't know, strongly or
Yeah, I
okay
think
about
that
it.
means
So,
strongly or.
okay.
So next one's really looking at product quality. So this is product quality evaluation. So when we're testing the products that we're testing, are we happy that we are measuring the right things in order to understand what the quality of the product is before we send it out?
Okay. Have maintained prioritized set of goals, product quality improvement. And what can be the goals of product quality? Can you help me with those? Because
so we're talking about things like for your products, what are the important product quality attributes for you? So what things are you looking to make sure are working well? Is security the most important thing for you? Is performance the most important thing for you? Is reliability the most important thing for you? So it's about understanding what the product quality goals are with the underlying product quality attributes, and how are you measuring those in order to understand that your product quality is good?
Okay. I would say slightly agree here.
Okay. This one is advanced reviews. So it builds on peer reviews, which we spoke about not too long ago, but looks at more closely aligning your static testing or reviews with your dynamic testing, and being able to make decisions on how much dynamic testing you might do or not do based on the outcomes of your reviews, which will give you an indication of product quality at an early stage.
This is again the question with about the differences between the V model and the agile for me.
Yeah.
And there is a simplified inspection process in the agile. So if you are doing that, maybe it's okay. And yes, those static testing is can change approach to the dynamic testing. So I think I would strongly address here. Start measuring product quality early in the application of. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Just this approach based on early indicators. Yeah, this is I would strongly agree here, because sometimes we are changing the. We know that something can be different here.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's good. And yeah.
Happy face.
Hooray. So there was again only 3 process areas. You got 2 quite unimpressed robots and 1 very happy one, so that's good in general. So yeah. Again, only 3 process areas at level 4, so this comes through a bit quicker, but it's exactly the same as the feedback you're getting for level 2 and 3.
Okay, great.
Level 5, first process area. This one is called defect prevention. So what are you doing in order to ensure that any defects you find aren't recurring in subsequent releases or subsequent projects? And root cause analysis is obviously the main thing we're looking at here.
We are doing such things in every project, so I would strongly agree here. And yes, we are prioritizing the actions needed.
Yeah. Good. This is quite an interesting one because it's one of the level. It's a level 5 process area, so it is quite high level, but it is one of the ones which people are most often doing, even if they're not doing everything at level 3 and 4.
Yeah,
most people do something around this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're into quality control, is the process
Mm-hmm.
area, and this looks at so we've seen at levels 2, 3, and 4 we talk about collecting information on product quality attributes. We talk about collecting all kinds of test measurements and all kinds of data. This is looking at then going on to utilize some of that data using statistical methods to work out how good or not your testing and quality activities actually are, and can you also use that data to help you understand potentially where you might be testing better in particular products.
As I said, we are not quite there. I'm not really happy about that, but I would like to be there to have some methods to measure the effectiveness of testing. Maybe this year we will create such framework. I would need to do some background here. So strongly disagree. Okay, I will say strongly disagree. Tests are designed, executed using statistical methods. I would say slightly disagree, but we are in some projects we are doing that things.
Yeah, and this is quality control. It is one of the least well understood process areas, shall we say, in TMMi. And I think that's simply because there are just simply so many ways of doing something. So it talks about statistical methods, but there are literally thousands of different statistical methods you could probably bring to bear on this, and probably an infinite number of ways in which you could use the data to inform your future testing. So what we're looking at here is that people are using that data in an appropriate way, and then in a way that helps their organization do what they need to do. But it is it's the most difficult process area, I believe, to get your head around in TMMi.
I'm not ashamed.
No, you're good.
Okay. Thinking about improving this process in an organization.
Yes, it's the last one. Test process improvement, test process optimization. I beg your pardon. This is this process area. It talks about how are you improving your testing, how are you improving your test tools, and then how do you go about implementing those changes. It also talks about reuse of some of your test assets and test process components, so that you're not reinventing the wheel constantly. You're getting good stuff reused.
So we clearly, I can strongly agree that we are identifying the quality process improvements here, because we have the plans, the action plans here.
I think your role is largely doing some of that, isn't it? So
yeah,
the fact that you're here kind of proves that one. So
yeah. So here also. We are doing some efforts on that part. Successfully evaluated new tools, method techniques, technical. Some things we are currently doing some things in some projects. We are starting with the new ones, with the new techniques or the innovations. We are doing the pilot ones and checking whenever this is working or not. So this is quite. I think
that's good.
This goes. Test assets and process components are version controlled and rarely. Strongly agree.
Good.
Oh.
And again, you get your little feedback session at a sad robot, because quality control, of course, you said it's not something you're really looking at the moment. So
So overall is the sad face.
And then there's simply a submit button. And at this point, the data comes back to us for processing. Thank you very much for completing the data. If I can share my screen again, I'll just show you very quickly the kind of thing that we send out, if that's okay. Oops, easy. I didn't want to press that one.
I can say that the questions in the survey can force test manager to rethink his or her testing process in the organization. So yeah, that's good to participate even in this initial part.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes it may not be that you feel you can answer all the questions yourself. So of course you can always get help, particularly for for people who maybe don't have your level of knowledge, correct? But you know, we can help people understand if they speak to us, of course. I'll just share my screen and do that. So yeah, so we were here on the model, and I hope we can see that now. So this is we send two things back. I'll show you this one first. So really, the feedback that we just saw with the robot faces comes back to you as part of the feedback. This is a reiteration of what you saw as you went through. So if you do the survey, don't worry about trying to screenshot those things. If you're interested in them, you'll get this when we send back the outcomes, and it's the feedback that we saw at levels 2, 3, 4, and 5. This is not the output from the one that Przemek just filled in. This is a dummy one, so that this isn't real, this one. But of course, it includes both where you've got some positive results. It tells you, you've got a positive result. And I think, for example, in this one, under quality control, we've got some, it talks about you've got a failing in that area or potential failing in that area, and this is what you may be missing out on because of that. So you get some nice levels of feedback, I think, on this. The other thing we always send back is this graph, and again, this is not a real one. This is some dummy data. So this talks about when you fill it in, we calculate a score for each process area, and the process areas around the outside of the circle. And what you told us is in blue. What we've also got, because we have done many assessments over the last 14 years, is we've got an awful lot of data from people in various domains that we've got both from the survey and from assessments we've carried out. So we can actually come up with an average for your industry sector if you tell us what your industry sector is at the start of the survey. So this person can take a look at this and say, actually, in general, with a couple of exceptions, we're probably outperforming the average for our industry sector. And obviously, it also tells you that whoever this person was would want to look at product quality evaluation and quality control, because they seem to be very different to the rest of it. And perhaps non-functional testing, perhaps they'd want to have a look at that one as well. So, as I say, this is dummy data, but this is the kind of feedback that organizations find really useful in order to help them envisage what it is they need to potentially prioritize to make things better.
And Simon, the questions or results and this graph is only the beginning, and the most important is the action plan. And after the assessment and reevaluation, from my perspective, what comes next after this initial survey that we just shared with?
Yeah. So what we do is at this point, if people take a look at their outcome and they say, actually, we'd like a little bit more detail around this, and we'd like an action plan. We would talk to us, and we can put a package together whereby we can do an assessment where we'll use somebody like myself, or we have other lead TMMi assessors. We'll actually do a more in-depth assessment. And I think going back to this, when we do the more in-depth one, we're looking down at this level, specific practice. So we go down to the next level of granularity, basically. And what we would do is we would talk to people. And we would also review documentation. So we would review your process documentation, your templates, your guidelines. We'd also review, worked examples of those. So where you finished a project, show us the test plan for that project if it had a test plan. From that, we come up with a process improvement plan. So that's a quite a low level set of suggestions for improvements that you can make based on your compliance to these specific practices. And we can tell you, when we've assessed you against this specific practice, we don't feel that you are satisfying that specific practice, therefore you need to do X. And we'll document all that in quite a level of detail, and provide that to the client. And at that point, they can go away and make those changes themselves, or they can work with us to help them make the changes, and we can reassess them later to make sure that they've come up to scratch, and potentially gain a certification if that's something they're interested in. But that is absolutely not mandatory.
It's good that we've created quite similar approach in our organization.
I think we have, yeah, which hopefully validates both of our approaches. So that's good.
Yeah, it's good to know.
Yeah. I think that's all from me. Are there any questions coming through, Sarah?
Yes, I have at least one question, which we still use or answer during the live, and after then I will stop streaming the live, and I will unmute our participant in case they have more questions. So the question that I've got is who should complete the survey? Testers, test leaders, or test manager, or anyone else? What is your opinion on both? Please share your opinion.
I think that's interesting. So anybody can complete this survey, and that's absolutely fine, and it's great. Typically, if it's somebody who has if it's going to be an individual completing it, potentially somebody who has a good overall knowledge of the processes that are in use within the organization is obviously better. One of the things we do with this survey, though, as well, is if a particular organization is interested, we can get a number of people within their organization. Potentially every tester they've got and every test manager they've got can fill in the survey, and we can pull all that data together, as well as give people the individual view. We can pull all that data together and give them an amalgamated, averaged view, which sometimes can be of interest. We've even, for some organizations, split that. So they asked us to provide an averaged view for their permanent staff members and an averaged view for their third-party supplier people who filled in the survey. And sometimes you can see some interesting differences there. So we can do it any way you like. But I think in general anybody can fill it in. But people with a good working knowledge of the organization's test process are the best people to fill it in. But if you want to get that rounded picture, we can certainly do that as well.
Przemek, is from your perspective, test manager, any test manager from Poland can handle those questions?
I think yes. With a little bit of knowledge and this webinar, I think everyone should be able to participate in this. What we are doing in my company, we are interviewing the test leaders in the project. Sometimes we are interviewing mature testers, but if we would interview different parties, then maybe the results would be skewed. So that's our work to share the knowledge about testing.
Great. So again, thanks for both that you just show and prove that those tool, we are able to handle this tool, and it brings a big and real value to organization. And see that we spent a little bit more than an hour just to fulfill those assessment. And I'm pretty sure that going through all those questions, all of us has many other aspects that they thought was not so obvious. before the approaching those survey, and now we have the list of the action items that we definitely, if we don't know now, probably it's something that we need to go around in our organization to ask, and maybe it gives the improvement. So as I promise, I just stopped streaming. So for all that was on the Facebook, goodbye, and 3, 2, 1, we just stopping. So in that one and moment, we just stop. And how can I allow people to ask? Well, let me check whether it's some crazy option which gives those attendees option to ask questions. So there should be only one button. Of course, I don't see, so I allowing to talk to everyone. So if you have any questions, feel free. If you'll comment, we still have our panelist here. So it's your time. I guess I will manage to cover everyone. But again, we're in Poland, so don't expect to be, challenged too much. But again, big thanks for this, because I have impression that for anyone who didn't look on those survey or didn't know about those existing tool, could be a little bit afraid of those questions, because there's the very at first impression, there's a very tough question about the the policy, the strategy, the training, all those stuff. While you just prove, by example, that it's not something that we cannot take care. It's a lot of good input, and thanks again, Przemek, that you're willing to share a little bit insights of your organization, and it is you just deliver the examples to each of us. So I think it's, and I really hope that it will cause that more input will go through the survey, and the people will, from curious, just click around and to check the outcome, the results, just to got those nice plot that you just presented.
Yeah,
Simon,
it can
out
be
of curiosity, do you have any new entries to the survey currently?
Not as we speak. So I do get inline real-time notifications. So no one's filled it in while we were talking, but I'm hoping to get some. Hoping to get some soon.
For sure, we are remind the URL of those survey when we publish those video on our YouTube channel, and there will be additional advertisement about those content.
Yeah,
so
great.
Guys, is your last chance to challenge our speakers for today. If not, and I don't see any more questions, raised hands, anything like this. So again, thanks for being with us. Thanks for those a big amount of the knowledge, and let's promote the TMMi. Let's use it. This is because it's a very nice framework that makes the quality better and our life better.
That's the plan.
That's the plan.
That's the plan.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.